Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. John Henry Soto here, as always, with George Batista, as always, over there on the other side of me. Um, very happy to be here with all of you again. It is Sunday night where we come to you live, and we're talking today about story. Story seems to be in every art form that we talk about, everything that we do, not even just art, but sometimes just people that are in business. They tell stories. How did Steve Jobs sell billions of dollars worth of really expensive, silly phones? How? Story. He'd get up on stage, he'd tell stories. He'd talk about passion, he'd talk about what's needed, he'd talk about the journey. And those are all stories. If you go back, you want to go even further back, you go into the Bible, you go into the Quran, you go into the Torah, you go into all their stories. Why were they made, put together? Because with a story, you can associate with pieces of the story that will get you elevated and understanding in your own life that you can actually then pass that story on to someone else. And that's why stories are big. I guess that's our show for tonight. Want to thank everybody for
John cracks himself up.
I really do. How you doing, George?
I'm doing wonderful. No, yes, stories.
Yeah.
Story. No, 100%. You know that it's interesting when I used to do sales,
Quack. Oh, what?
sales,
Oh,
and and when I would go to conferences and stuff, the biggest thing they always said was tell stories,
yeah,
right? Because people can identify with stories,
yeah,
and it's better. I didn't understand that concept until later, until I really started seeing it. And then people were telling me stories, for example,
right.
or I would go to a conference and I'd hear somebody on stage and they tell this incredible story, and I leave there and I'm going, oh my god,
Yeah,
it's an incredible story. I gotta, and then you get motivated and it
yeah,
touches you
yeah,
and all that. So yeah, it's incredible.
yeah. And I mean, this is why the whole TED Talk thing started.
Yes.
It became very popular, and now it's become almost a requirement if you're a entrepreneur to really tell your story and to navigate it and to be able to get people to follow it with the idea that you want to pass along something to them. You want to give them something that's going to make them feel better, do better. And I think that that's, it's a great thing. And, I also think that sometimes story, as far as the way stories are told, they can be completely smooth. And then, so not everyone is a good storyteller
Right.
because they just don't work on it, you know? And so for me personally, like when I see an ad trying to sell me something with a story, but I could see that it's been pushed, manufactured, there's no real there's no real soul behind it, not that it's an AI thing, although that's coming too. But it's meant more for commerce than it is for motivation and inspiration, and that's what commercials do basically, right? Small commercials that very quickly have to tell you a quick story about why this detergent is great and how her husband now loves her more because his shirts are cleaner. Very quickly they got to tell you that story in 15 seconds or 30 seconds to sell you the crap that they have. So the story, and the ones that are more impactful are the ones that we remember till this day.
Yeah.
Where's the beef? What's up? All those silly things from the past were miniature stories that we identify with very quickly, and then will get us to the next thing and make us even want the product.
Right.
You know,
Agreed. Agreed.
so that's definitely an important thing. Let me ask you about something because you coming from the wellness, we both in music and film and all this stuff, but coming from the wellness, like who do you think is the best storyteller in the health space, or at least the top couple of them.
Best storyteller. It's a good question.
Like when you watch a video that
Yeah,
you immediately engrossed in what they're saying, and they have a purpose to saying something.
right. Um, I mean, I guess in the health industry, for me, like one of the best ones, in my opinion, is Gary Null, for
Yeah,
example.
I was gonna say him. Yeah.
He's and you could tell that you could tell like I've listened to him throughout for so many years, and
Yeah.
his show has evolved.
Yeah,
And
he's been around for about 40 years.
yeah, over 40 years he's been doing the show. I mean, it's the longest health
Yeah.
show ever on
He was
radio.
he was doing this when people weren't even talking about health. Like people
Exactly.
were eating, whatever they wanted to eat, and seed
Yeah.
oils were part of our lives.
But one of the things he does on his show, and he's done this more, I'd say, within the last few years since I've listened to him, is he tells stories, because he's got so many stories.
I can imagine.
Because he's done so much in 40, 50 years of in the health space. So he tells a lot of stories about what he did and when he did it, and back in the 70s when he debated somebody and this is what happened and all these stories. And I'm listening, I'm fascinated. And then there's some of these stories, and it blows me away, because he says it like, this policy wouldn't have been this policy if it wasn't for me doing that and in front of
Wow.
Congress,
So his
and I'm going, holy
presence.
cow, yeah, like, but he doesn't brag about it, because
Right.
but he says, just so you know, it was me and this other doctor that did this, and we took it to Congress and we lobbied and we did. I was like,
Yeah.
so I think he's a great storyteller. And then for me, I feel that, like, on my show, I kind of took some of that and I did it on my show, and I do it on my show. Like, my show is really all about my story,
Yeah.
and I talk about my story on the show to motivate people
Right.
to be able to do what I did in the health space.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting.
Yeah, it's the same kind of thing for me, where my show is basically about my story too, the journey, and
Right.
in film and music and life lessons and stuff like that. Again, to motivate people, motivate artists to want to be more, and so I tell, and you've heard all my stories, just stories that I've told throughout my life, really. And then now, I have these stories kind of memorized, where I tell them if I'm at a party or if I'm in an event or something, and I have to speak, or on my show or whatever, or when we're doing an interview, I can break into a story and I know it so well, and I know what important parts of the story get people motivated, because I've said it so many times. I've what do you call it? I've tested it, right? So I've surveyed it. So I know when I say certain things this way, people just like that one section. So I always make sure that I hit out these points. And even if I'm giving an abbreviated story, like I don't have a lot of time, but I'm doing that, I know that those are the points that really get people. So I'll always make sure that I focus on that,
Right.
And for me, one of the it's gonna sound silly, but I think the storyteller for me that when I was a kid was, believe it or not, Mr. Rogers.
Ah, nice.
And the reason for that is because, he obviously had a soft spoken. He was, he was talking to you, not at you.
Right.
There was a purpose for him. I felt the sincerity of what he was saying. I mean, millions of people did. And he became a legend. I mean, he was. And one thing that fascinates me about Mr. Rogers is that in today's world, right, we can use some of what he has today, but he would go on Johnny Carson, and I would watch Johnny Carson all the time. And whenever, certain people were on Johnny Carson, I made sure that I stayed up and watched, even if I was a kid, and wasn't allowed to stay up. I would try to figure out a way to stay up. But it was Mr. Rogers, and there were other people like, I can't think. Frank Sinatra was on, or Don Rickles was on, or Robin Williams, or one of those people were on. I always made Martin Short when he was on was always fantastic. On Johnny, particularly on Johnny Carson, because Johnny had a way of knowing how to let them go and then interjecting and then knowing when. And like, he was just a master. But whenever Mr. Rogers was on, he would tell stories. You know, he would tell a story. And I have one other person that also I love too, which I'll talk about in a second. But Mr. Rogers would tell these stories, and you would think that people would just be like, I remember being riveted, just listening, and he's not speaking like the last guy that just came in there, like, you know, Don Rickles was on the night before or whatever, and it's like, blah, 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 you know,
Right.
he's not. He's taking his time. He's very, very intentional with his words,
Right.
you know, and because of that, you hang on it because he's put that much thought into what he's saying.
Yeah.
And so I loved it. Another one is Jimmy Stewart.
Mm.
Jimmy Stewart would also be on Johnny Carson all the time, and he would always either tell a joke, and these jokes were these long, and you know, as he got older, he got slower, and he even made the joke about that, you know, about how, you know, he started just talking slower as he got older, but he would tell these wonderful stories. And sometimes he wrote a book of poetry. Actually, one of his books that he wrote was all poetry, and he would come on the show and do one of his pieces, and it was just a master of controlling the audience. Frank Sinatra walking on stage,
Yes.
68 MSG in the round with a drink and a cigarette. That simplicity, you know, is missing today. Like, you have to be blah 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 blah, you know, and nobody's attention and the awareness level is whatever it is. I don't think it's, you know, it's what's being focused on, but I do think that there are people that are aware, and there are people that are still understand this, and they understand, you know, much younger than us, that are nostalgic of this era that we lived through, that they wish they had.
Right.
I know there are people like that right now. As a matter of fact, the artist that I just played for you right before we went on, you know, she's a jazz, you know, a lover. She knows all the guys, you know. She's also a trombone player, has an amazing voice. So she relishes that era, that time period. So, you know, the storytelling element of it, when you can really tell a story that you're really intentional, that you know that you want to get a point across that's going to possibly change somebody's life. You know, you have to take breath in the right places. You have to make sure that the point that you want to make lands.
Yeah.
Because if you have a room full of, you know, 100 people or 5 people, you want all 5 or all 100 to at least have the possibility of getting it.
Right.
And having that land. And one of the things for me growing up, you know, in the Bronx and the South Bronx and all that, some of the stories that I tell there, you know, I don't want sympathy, you know, because that's a cancer. I don't want empathy either. You know, I don't want sympathy. I don't want empathy. I want duplication.
Yes.
That's it.
Yes.
I want people to understand what I'm saying. And then I want them to be able to relate it.
Right.
Something in their lives.
Right.
You know, and when you structure a story, that's how you structure it. You know, it's almost like a formula. I mean, there is a formula to it. You can learn it, and there's all these speakers. I think the best speakers are the ones that are kind of flying, you know, on the cuff kind of a deal, but they know their material so well that they know where to hit. Jim Rohn, you know.
Yes.
Jim Rohn, like, you know, and he's got that tone in his voice.
Yes.
That is very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, he had a way of telling stories and of talking that, and then leaving space.
Yeah.
Where you're like he gives you space, and a lot of speakers who tell great stories, like I've noticed there's even podcasters that do this who are really good at this. The guys that I listen to, they have this way of talking where they say whatever they're saying, and then they leave a gap.
Yeah.
And you process in that gap.
Yeah.
and you're like, oh,
And I tell you, that is a new thing
yeah,
that
but
they
it's
brought that they took that storytelling uh, uh, facet and interjected it into podcasts because
right.
back in the old days, radio that's called dead air,
You're correct.
and
Exactly.
that was like a killer for
Right.
radio. You could
That's
not
right.
have dead air,
Right.
you know. Now another person who recently just got canceled was Howard Stern.
Right.
So Howard Stern did dead air really well.
Hmm.
He was a master of that a long
Yes.
time ago, not anymore, but he was. Imus,
That's right.
same kind of thing. Even if you remember Jay Thomas, who remembers
Jay
Jay Thomas?
Thomas. Yes.
Had that way of controlling the conversation and saying something and then holding on,
Right.
you know, and waiting for the process. And that was only a radio thing that only very few people can do. Now in podcasts, you can do it a little bit more. Especially, I think Christian radio did it for many years. I think that was because I listened to a lot of that back in the day. And even today, I have my radio set to a Christian radio station that I listen to because I like the stories.
Hmm.
I like the pacing. I like
Sure.
how they I like some of the music, you know.
Right.
But so they have that because they know the importance of story.
Yeah.
That's what Jesus did.
Right.
You know, he went around and he told stories, and that was part of his teachings were through stories.
Exactly.
You know? And yeah, so it's pretty awesome.
It even goes to what we were talking about prior to this in music, for example, right? Some of the albums that are stories, right? We talked about it. The albums are stories from beginning to end. But it's interesting. One of the first songs, it might be a weird song for some, but one of the first songs that was out a long time ago that I really listened to the lyrics and listened to the story from beginning to end was a song by Dan Fogelberg. Right. And it was the New Year's song that he sings where he talks about how he met his old flame. Right. And he tells the story of them getting to know each other and how, you know, how they were kind of getting to know each other again and they were having drinks and how he was different and she was different and how, you know, and it's a beautiful story from beginning to end when you really listen to that song. And I'm going, what a well-written song that is, because it takes you into them. It takes you into them sitting there, and you also relate to it. Like, oh my, you know, I could have seen my old girlfriend at some place, and we're talking, and it's like it brings that back. And it's a beautifully written song, and I always think about that song when I think about stories.
Yeah, that's a great one. I mean, there's a lot of one. Songs that you could think about that. For me personally, I remember like Operator, you know.
Oh yeah, yes.
You know, just such a it's really a heart-wrenching song when you think about it, you know. But it's an operator, can you play?
Well, how about Cats in the Cradle?
Oh, dude, don't get me started with that. I have a son, he's 8, he's gonna be 9 next month. And you know that song comes on. He knows that song. He knows word for word because I play it in the car all the time. So we know that song, and you know there's a lot of those like that. That in song it's even more impressive when you because to capture a story in less than 4 minutes, melodically, lyrically,
right?
You know where you're in. Right from day one, you know, right from the first note. I mean, you're in, you know, and that to me is such a skill.
It is,
and we don't have that kind of writing anymore. Like, or at least I haven't run into it. There's a lot of people out there that are doing great writing, but you know, we're talking about the Elton Johns and Billy Joel and Sting, and that told these stories and these. Like we were just talking right before we went on the air about 10 Sumner's Tale.
Yeah.
And those 10 songs, 10 stories, you know, and you really know the story. You see what's happening in each story, you know. Billy Joel with a scene from an Italian restaurant.
That's right.
You know, that's 3 sections of 3 stories, you know. Same story.
Yeah.
But split up in this way that just genius, you know.
That is genius. That is
Vienna,
Mhm.
songs like that. Moving Out, even, it was such a interesting song. The Piano Man
Yeah.
is a song. He talked recently. He said it's about a a piano player in a gay bar. That's
Right.
what he that's what he said it was
Right,
about.
right.
And but yeah, you listen to all these incredible stories in song, and you realize that it doesn't take a lot.
No. Right,
It
right, right.
doesn't take a lot. We're into these epic films, and I think that a lot of times we're caught up in the visuals, because that's what it is. It's a visual medium, right? Um, you know, Film is a visual medium. It's an editor's medium. They're the ones that cut it together. They piece it together. The story. They know what the story is. It's the director. It's that kind of a thing. But sometimes, if you let the visuals, especially if you have a nice camera and you got this beautiful scenery,
Mhm.
and you want to pan across, and you do a 20-second pan across, when really in actuality you needed maybe 5,
Right.
and you do that through the film, then you can run the risk of losing people, in the fact that some people just want to use the shot because they paid a lot of money for it, or
Yeah.
they worked for it, or it was a hard shot to get, but we got the shot, so we have to use it. But you hear directors sometimes, and you're like, you know what, that was a good shot, but didn't fit.
Mm.
It just doesn't flow. It doesn't keep the story moving.
Sure.
you know so when you're storytelling, I think, you know as long as you keep a little bug bothering me here. um when you're I'm just going crazy.
John's in the forest.
There's no bug at all. I'm just like, these damn dragons. um when you have a director that's very, very focused on story, and he's hanging on it, and he's there, and then in the editing room you see, like, okay, this doesn't fit, this doesn't fit, that's got to go, this got to go. Okay, remember that scene that we thought we weren't going to use? Bring that in and put it in there. Let me see what it looks like.
Right.
That's good.
Right.
You do all those things, and that's how you get the finalized product of a story.
Right. 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 Yeah. It's, but you also, it's interesting when you hear a story, especially let's say of an artist, right? And it's a powerful story. It could be the art, like, sometimes the artist of what they went through to get to where they are.
Mm-hmm.
You have a different respect for the artist, right? So, if you remember a while back, I brought the story of Jewel, right? Which
Right.
is an incredible
Amazing
musical story.
story.
It's one of the
Amazing.
best musical stories I've heard in a long time, as
Yeah.
far as, you know, going from living in your car to being an extremely successful artist.
Amazing.
And it blew me away. And I found myself looking at her completely different,
Yeah. Yeah.
and, you could say the same thing about Sylvester Stallone's story, right?
Yes.
And what he went through to become successful. You look at that guy so different now. You
Yep.
have such a respect for that person where you're like, wow. And those things stay with you, because
They do.
even Jules' story stays with me. When I want to get something done, or I want to, and I find myself like, oh, how am I going to get this done? How am I? Those stories, I
Yeah.
go, but think about what this person went through at that
Yeah.
time. So
Yeah.
it's
Steve,
really an
Steve
interesting
Harvey.
thing. Huh?
Steve Harvey. I don't know
Yeah,
if you
that's right.
heard his
Steve Harvey
story.
had a good one too.
I
Yeah,
mean, what an incredible story.
yeah,
He's about to give up. He's got no money to
right.
get to New York for the Apollo. They want him at the Apollo. He's got no money. He had, like, I think he had $70,
Wow.
and he needed to get to New York. There's just no way. Okay, no, I think he had $35, something like that. He calls his phone. He has a message. It's back when you called your voicemail.
Right.
Called his voicemail, and right when he went to hang up, it beeped again, like it was something else. Called up. The guy wanted him for a show down at somewhere, like he can get down there,
Mm.
do 2 shows, and then they called him back again. He said, hey, if you can come down and stay an extra night, I'll pay you $300 for the. So he said Eastern Airlines had a. Remember Eastern Airlines?
Eastern Anna.
Eastern Airlines had a good
Wow.
deal for $99 to New York, round trip, and or one way or whatever it was. So he got to New York, got to the Apollo, had no place to stay at the Apollo. He didn't know anybody. He went right to the Apollo, and it was during the daytime. And then he goes, "What are you doing here? It's tonight. Why are you here?" Because I mean, I got no place to go, man. If you just let me go right upstairs, man, I'll just be quiet. I won't. And the guy let him in, and then he finally he was starving, so he had to go out. So he says, if I could just run out there and get a piece of chicken right there at the KFC or something, I'll be right back. So he runs over, gets some food and stuff, and he hangs out there. And then he tells stories of like Jamie Foxx, when he was on that particular show with Jamie Foxx, and Jamie Foxx got booed off the stage. And he's sitting on the steps, and Steve Harvey went out. Steve Harvey killed, he killed, and he got offered to host the Apollo, and he did for 9 years. He was there, but he saw Jamie Foxx on the stairs, and he's like a broken man, and he told Steve, and he's like, I don't know, man. I don't think this is gonna be this is for me, man. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. And Steve was just helping. Can you imagine that? Steve Harvey is trying to motivate Jamie Foxx, Academy Award winner, like freaking, super funny guy, comedian, singer.
That's right.
Really good singer too.
Yep.
And I mean, you talk about the triple threat, all that. So, again, these stories, this is how they impact you, because then they give you the ability to not only look back to their story, but like you said, when you're going through the thing.
Yes.
When you're challenged in some way, you start thinking to yourself, you know what? Let me just keep moving forward. Let me just keep trying this, or let me just maybe ask somebody who can help me, but let me not give up. Right. Because the one sure thing, that you will never make it when you give up. That's the one thing you definitely know for sure.
That's right.
By giving up, you have no chance at all, whereas at least if you, give yourself another day, who knows what could happen, So, what else are we going to talk about? Oh, yeah. So I wanted to also talk a little bit about the story of what we've been doing for this show. So those of you who've been following from day one back in the 70s when George and I started this show, early 70s. This was back when we were on that other network. We were on WHT first. We were on WHT, man. It was amazing. Great memories that we have there. We went right on after Joe Franklin.
the most famous man nobody knows.
Yeah.
I always say that.
At 2 a.m. we would come on, and man, what a joy do we have. But when we started this, George and I think it's gone through a lot of evolutions, the story of what we're doing here, and what, it's gotten to the point now where we're just, and George and I, no, we did talk about this early on, George. You and I said, if nobody ever watches this, right, this will be George and I hanging out. We get along, talking about things that we enjoy talking about, music, film, nutrition, wellness stuff, world things about the world, conspiracies, Star Trek, Rush, whatever it was that we want to talk about. And that's what we do. And and that to me would be fine, but luckily we've been, we have an audience, people watch us, and people enjoy us, and we get nice messages from people every once in a while. And but the story of this is that we started out originally just kind of like doing our own. We wanted to talk about Star Trek originally. We did 15 episodes of that. That didn't seem to. Well, what happened was we started going from Star Trek to life things.
Yeah.
And then we realized, well, maybe we shouldn't just narrow our selves to Star Trek. Although we probably could have mastered the space is not really that huge, and it's also not that entertaining. I don't know many of the Star Trek people that are out there. Some of them have been around for a very, very long time. They love it. They've been doing it a long time. They have thousands of followers and stuff like that. Um, but we wanted to bring some other twist to it. We wanted to do interviews, which we did. We did some
Yeah.
interviews of some Star Trek people, and it was a lot of fun. But then we decided to kind of go in a little bit more into the world stuff and talk about, and that's where Counterparts. It was we called it Counterparts at that. Was it? No, we always called it our Counterparts, and then from there we went to um, Artist Blueprint,
Artist Blueprint, yeah.
right? Because we thought we're just gonna deal with artists, and then all the artists come on board and they talk and they give us their way of doing it, which is a blueprint to how to be successful in the art. And that was good. We did some good shows and great shows actually, during that time. And then we started realizing that in actuality, George's show, Wellness Talk, he's been doing it for a very long time. He has thousands of views on his show. He does very, very well on his show. And he should just be doing his show. And then the encouragement was like, well, John, you've been doing content for a long time. You should just be doing your show, your name. And then I'll be on your show and we do this show on Sunday nights. And then during the week, I do my own show. And I think that that's really been, and then we went into another thing, part of the story where then the material was like very curated.
Right.
We made sure everything was okay. I got my printouts. I have all my look at this. Look at this. This is the printouts of the shows that we did.
Wow.
And because I wanted to have the material, so I'm saving this. I'll maybe put a book together with this someday. A lot of entertaining stuff in there, and I would read some of the stuff. I would read it. Unfortunately, a lot of it was before ChatGPT. So,
Yeah.
so unfortunately, I wrote some of it. Towards the end, I started ChatGPT helped me organize it a lot.
Right.
But then I went really on script, and I would read these things, and then we would talk, and then that felt very
Right.
very stiff, and it wasn't really me. I was just trying to do a show, and that didn't really work for us. And then finally, we just decided that why don't we just talk about what happens during the week, things that I run into, things that I think could help people. I think with an episode like today, with the story, I think storytelling is so important. What is your story?
Right.
Do you have a story? And I talked about this. Did I talk about it with you? No. I was at a meeting a couple of days ago with somebody, and we were talking about Paul Williams. Paul Williams, the singer and songwriter and actor and writer. He so I have a story with that, but I'm not going to tell that story because I've told that story before. But one of the things that he was a recovering alcoholic. He's been 30 years sober. He's amazing. He is a spokesperson for like the Caron Institute, or I think it's called the Caron Institute, which is an organization that helps those that to get off alcohol and drugs and stuff like that. And so one day, there was an event in New York City, and I said, I'm going to go. I'm going to go to see it because he's going to be there. And I think Tracy Jackson was there, and she's a co-author of their book, Gratitude and Trust. And so I said, I'm going to go to this. And so I went, and I got to see them. I got to hang out with them. We had lunch and everything. It was really, really awesome. Had a great time. But one of the things that everyone kept asking me, and I didn't know this, I sat at a table, with strangers. I introduced myself. Hey, everyone, my name is John Henry Soto. I'm originally from here in New York City. I'm currently, I think I was living in Jersey at the time, and everybody was like, "Hi, John." And so I sat down at the table, and it was about, I don't know, a really nice place up on Park Avenue somewhere, maybe like I don't know, 15 tables, big room, ballroom kind of a thing, beautiful. And so Paul Williams spoke and he told stories about his recovery. And one of the things that everyone kept asking me was like, what's your story? What's your story? What's your story? And the first time they asked me, I thought it was interesting. I was like, oh, it's an interesting question. What's your story? And it wasn't like, so what's your story?
Right,
It
right,
wasn't like
right,
that. It was like,
right.
so John, tell us what's your story. And so I said, I'm naive. So I told a story about where I grew up and all these other and a few other things and stuff. And they were like, oh, okay. But I didn't talk about alcoholism because I've never had I've experienced it indirectly through other people that have brought it into my space. But me personally did not.
Right.
So then I was mingling after the event went on. I went to another table. I'm sitting down. I'm having some drinks and stuff. Not drinks, but everybody was wasted. No, but we were just. I'm like, can I get a Budweiser? Everybody's like, oh. So I'm sitting down. I'm having like a nice little drink and stuff, a beverage with some friends there. And again, John, what's your story? So as they were asking me, I started hearing other people asking them, what's your story?
Mm.
And the story that they do, like in AA, you really get your story from when you hit rock bottom
Mm.
to when you made it back and you realized and you got treatment and you recovered. Your recovery story.
Yes.
And I was like, wow. And then Paul at the end of the event, he asked me, he was like, are you recovering as well? And I was like, no, but I told him a personal story from and he's like, yeah, it affects so many people, and he said, people don't realize how one person can affect so many others,
Yes.
with their problem, but anyway, that always fascinated me and made me look at stories differently because now we're coming from from not only a story of pain, but now you have to take that pain and you have to somehow turn it into a cohesive, inspiring story that you can tell at meetings,
Yeah.
at gatherings, at any time, because that is now going to be part of your world.
Yeah.
It's like in the Bible. I mean, parables, right? That's what
Hmm.
you tell, and it becomes your own parable in a sense.
Right.
And you're now have to craft it. That it actually. So it made me think completely different of story, and even my stories that I told, I thought, oh, you know what? I was I was keeping away. I was not putting in the pain in my stories. And not that I felt that I wanted to, again, no sympathy, no empathy. That's not what I was talking about. But when you incorporate the pain, when you incorporate the challenges and struggles, the story becomes more powerful because there's a success at the end.
Correct.
It's the recovery stories. It's
Correct.
like, what's your story? And so that to me made me look at story that one particular day, and I was always grateful that I went that day because it gave me a whole new appreciation for how I'm going to orchestrate future stories.
It's like the story that you've told a few times on this show about the Christmas tree stories and the thing that you got, right? That
Yeah.
story always blows me away because when you were going through that, I mean, you never told me that story at the time. I didn't know you were going through that at the time
Right.
until later
Right.
on, right? And I'm like, wow, I didn't know you went through all that, right?
Right.
So that always fascinates me. But then, I look back and I go, but look at you, right? Look at where you've come. Look at the
Got this
life,
hat.
right? Exactly. You got an
I
awesome
got a
hat,
nice hat. Got a
and
microphone.
yeah, it's
Coffee.
and the family that you have now and the life that you live
Oh,
and all this. And it's the same, and I think about it, it's the same thing for me because again, we all have the stories. And I don't I've talked about my health story as far as, which is it's a decent story for me because it's really crafted this whole, this whole way of I do my show. But I've also gotten deep, not as many times, but I've gotten deep into my growing up,
Yeah.
as far as what I went through with my parents and what I went through with my dad, and the
Hmm.
stories of my dad, and which was hard. It was hard. And though that what I went through as a kid, and talk about 7, 8, 9 years old, between my parents' really terrible divorce and everything they went through, still to this day affects me. But it affects me in the way where I know it's there. It's always there,
Right.
but I I persevere in spite of it. Okay.
Right.
I've crafted this life in spite of that. And I could have completely gone another
You're
way. and
caged.
and a lot of people in my extended family and even friends, when they know my story as a kid, they always tell me, wow, I you could have really gone through a whole different way and all this and blah blah blah. And the fact that you came out the other side and you've actually become better because of it. and
Mm.
and I say, because of that story, and every time I tell those stories, I actually look at myself and I say, you know what, I use those stories to become better.
100%.
And so it is interesting,
And now
which
we can use those stories to make others better,
exactly,
and
exactly.
that's really what the purpose of it,
Right.
and those stories, there's some stories, honestly, there's some stories that I can't get through
Yeah.
because I start
Yeah.
bawling.
Yeah.
There's like two particular stories that I've tried to tell them, not on a show because I can't do it on a show, but
Sure.
I've tried to tell them, as because I sometimes I'll practice my speaking,
Yeah.
and I'll practice telling a story, or at least in my head, and I see myself going.
Yeah.
I feel
Yeah.
myself going, and I'm thinking, no, if I'm talking now out loud about this story, I'm not going to get through it. I'm going to break up crying, and it's
Right.
going to be this whole thing. And again, that's one thing that I don't want, is the sympathy part of it.
Right.
You know what I mean? I don't want sympathy. I don't want empathy. I want to just be looked at as just somebody who went through some stuff, handled it, and now I'm here continuing to handle it, because nothing is, ever just perfect. It's always challenges going on and stuff. But one of the important things is that I know now that being able to tell a story not only helps those that I'm telling the story to, but it also helps me, because the more times I tell it, the less it becomes effect to me.
Yes.
It's
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
that continuous telling of that story just becomes less and less, more confrontable, more easy to tell. That's how some of these people that you see them telling these horrific stories,
Yeah.
are constantly telling their story in front of
Right.
like thousands of people. And you realize, how do you get to that point?
Right.
Well, you do it a lot.
Yeah.
You do it a lot, and that's how you do it.
It's funny. I was telling somebody a while back who became, who had just had a kid, and I was telling them this, like, kind of the stories of, of things as a dad, right? How being a dad changes you,
Oh man.
and how you just, it changes you emotionally, it changes you just in all different ways. And I was telling the story of when my daughter had and she was young. I want to say she was 7, maybe. I want to say something like that, 7 or 8. And she had, what ultimately ended up with, we figured out, was like a UTI. But
Oh,
she was having pain, and she was
oh,
really, we brought her to the hospital and the whole thing. And it wasn't the fact that she was in pain or anything like that, because she was kind of handling it, but they wanted to do so many tests and there was not as much time, so they wanted her to stay overnight for observation,
mm,
right? And as a kid, you have the parents stay with her, right? So I said, okay, I'm going to stay with her, and they only allowed one parent to stay. So I said, I'm going to stay. So I told her, okay, you're going to stay. And she flipped and she just started bawling. And I'm telling her, I'm going to stay with you, I'm gonna be there right with you in the room. But she's like, I don't want to stay. I don't want to stay. And I'm like, well, I'm gonna be. So then I get a phone call because my aunt, right? So I was like, okay, hold on. So I'm like, I told my wife, I said, try to calm her down. When I get on the phone with my aunt, I start bawling.
Yeah.
I just start bawling. And I'm trying to tell my aunt what's happening, but I can't get through it
No.
because I'm like,
Yeah.
it was the weirdest sensation because it wasn't the fact that she was hurt, right? In a way, it was
Yeah.
the fact that she was upset that
Yeah.
she didn't want to stay. That's what broke my heart.
Me too.
You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? And I'll never forget that day because I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, she's
Yeah.
in the hospital,
Yeah.
and I'm trying. And my aunt's like, okay, and she's like, I got it. She's like, I figured it out. Just call me and let me know what happens. I'm like, and I'm going, oh my god, I'm like, tears are coming now. I'm like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm crying. It was the weirdest
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. I mean, it's a natural thing,
It
obviously.
is,
It's
right?
totally natural.
Where you see
But
your kid that way. You know
that's
what I
the
mean?
thing
It's
about
like,
it. It's like when you're talking about your kids,
yes,
there's when you can't just take their pain and
yes,
make them feel good right in instantaneous, there's a helplessness that you realize that, because up to that point you can feed them, you make them laugh, you give
right,
them clothes, you give them a roof, all that stuff is like, I got that. You buy them stuff, you get them, candy at Halloween, and you have all this fun stuff. And then when the one time, or the first time for you that you can't handle it with just what you bring,
exactly.
it's like that just really just affects. So I totally understand that. I think one of the hardest times for me was with my daughter, uh, bringing her to school.
Yes, I had that too. Yeah.
I mean, there's a
Yes.
song.
It's the worst.
There's a song.
sensation.
There's a song by Darius
Darius Rucker?
Ruckers.
Right.
Darius Rucker. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cannot get through it.
Yeah.
If I'm driving and that song comes on, I'm gone.
Yeah.
I'm gone, because it came out at the time when everything in my life
Yeah.
was exactly like this, including the age
Right.
of my daughter and the school, everything. And till this day, that's one of those songs that you just can't. Again, story, the power
Yes.
of that story, because it relates to me.
Yeah.
It's so powerful. And that was one of the toughest times, was dropping her off at school and then her crying.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, when I was auditioning back in New York and I was going on a lot of auditions, we had a babysitter that we would bring her to, and we had this one new one. She was very nice lady. Nothing with her, but I went to drop off my daughter, so I can go to this audition, and she could not let me go.
Yeah.
And I had to make a decision.
Yeah.
Do I just let her screaming her with somebody that she knows them and we know them, but she doesn't want to stay there. Right. And she's crying and bawling and just hugging me and would not let me go. And I had to make the toughest decision if I was going to either, go and let her be like that, or just like not go at all. I finally just kicked her into a corner. No, I'm just kidding. No, I finally said, you know what? This audition is not really worth it. I'm just not going to go to the audition. Right. And I apologized to the, and she was fine. She was like, okay, no problem. Anytime, I'm here. And we went out, we went for pizza. And that was the end of that. But it did cost me the contract that I had signed with that agency.
Wow.
I was dropped after that.
Look at that.
Yeah. So it did cost me. But
is it? Yeah. That's that parent thing.
And it is a parent thing. And, I also think to myself, did I do the right thing? Right. Oh, but, you lost the thing. I would do it again the same exact way. 100%. I mean, for me, it's like I told them, I said, look, this is what happened. And they were like, well, John, we really can't. Because they send, and I totally understand them. I'm not angry at them at all.
Sure.
They have a business to run, and right. They send you out because they think you're good for this thing. And then if you don't show up, and it happened twice. That's one of the reasons why, for the same reasons. Right. So, these are stories. This is a story. I just told you a story, you know,
Yeah,
and you know, these stories are things that we utilize to get through life.
but you know, it's interesting with those songs. Like when you talked about that song, for me, there's two of them, and one of them was used at my daughter's Sweet 16.
Planet Rock, Africa Mambata.
Hey, that's it.
You love that song.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Silent
Um,
Morning.
but it's yeah, one of them was used at my daughter's Sweet 16 for the dance, right? And the other one of them is what's his name? The one that's married to Faith Hill,
Oh, um,
Tim
Ken
McGraw.
Tim McGraw. Yeah,
Yeah, he has a
yeah, I know
song.
the song.
Yeah, that one.
That's
Okay,
just a killer one.
you get it. That
God.
one, yeah. And the other one is Billy Joel Lullaby.
Ah, nah, dude,
Okay,
you
both
killed
those
me.
songs. No, it happened the other day. I was at
Yeah,
last week. I was listening to Bill. No, my playlist actually.
yeah,
Those songs are on my playlist,
yeah.
and of
To
course
mine too.
that one comes on.
Yeah,
The one by Tim McGraw, and I'm like driving, and in 5 minutes I'm like this.
yeah,
It's streaming down. But the thing is that this the you know you're this because also those
yeah,
songwriters are telling the story,
yeah, yeah,
and I'm blurry again. Okay, there we go. The story they're telling the story, and you're relating to that story as the parent,
yeah,
and
yeah. It's
it just blows you away.
yeah, yeah, and you know that I don't see that going away.
No,
I don't see that going away. Where? How? Why?
it's just,
How? Why would that go away? The love don't go anywhere.
no,
It gets stronger, if
yeah,
anything. You know.
yeah.
Yeah. The song with there's a couple of them. There's a couple of them. You know, John Statham,
Hmm.
who we've interviewed,
Right.
has a song about his mom. It comes on, and I sometimes skip it because I'm driving,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I'm like, I can't do it because I'm going to a meeting right now, and if I show up with red eyes
yeah.
and I'm about to bawl, I just can't do it. It's a beautiful song he wrote for his mom, and every time I hear it, because you know my mom and
Right.
passed, and it was about his mom passing, and it was like, all right, that's it. You know, again, brilliant in storytelling where you can take some chords, some music, some a melody line, and some lyrics,
Yeah.
and move someone to tears.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
know, and it's vibrations,
Yeah.
it's emotional vibrations through that affect you spiritually, you know, and that's the most powerful thing, you know, and that's why we talk about story. And I love this episode, this particular thing that we're talking about, this one episode, because it I realize now that it's so deeper than what even we're covering it. I mean,
Yeah.
it's it, it's way deeper than anything that we could even imagine. The power that a story has to, you know, any type of story has to change someone's life.
That's right.
You know, today I was talking to someone who came into the church for a Sunday service, and he said that he's from Las Vegas, and he moved here for a hard reset.
Mm.
He said, because he's really been down and out. This was a guy who I can tell has been really through the ringer.
Hmm.
And so I just started talking to him, and you know, I've been doing this a long time, so I can always find the thing that I feel, not all the time. You know, some people are, you just, you know, but 99% of the time I can have something that I can relate to,
Right.
whether it's music and film, a story where you grew up, the kind of work you do, whatever it is, I can find something, you know.
Right.
And with him, it was his environment where he grew up in,
Mm.
you know, and he felt through those things, and he started, and he says, you know, it's hard sometimes to fight the demons,
Yeah.
you know, and these are all his words and stuff. And I remember thinking, okay, well, and I told him the story of growing up in the Bronx,
Right.
you know, and the decisions that you have to make,
Yep.
you know, and sometimes you make poor decisions in life in general, and decisions that not only hurt you but hurt others.
That's right.
And you start thinking to yourself, you know, you start thinking, is were was that me, or was it something that triggered else, something that I may not even know is there?
Right.
You know, because we as spiritual beings here on this planet, not to get so religious here, but we as spiritual beings on this planet are here to help each other, and we have all the same qualities. We all have the same, abilities. Some of us may do certain things better than others, but ultimately we're all equal in the eyes of whatever creator you have, right? So is it you, or is it outside forces in the environment that's making you do that, or something that happened to you in the past that you're revisiting and getting re-stimulated to then do again? Is that the case? So I was telling him a story and something that I always tell myself, when I back in the days when I found myself in a position that I felt like, I wasn't happy. I was in a situation, in a miserable state or whatever it was. Is it me that's in a miserable state? Is it the environment making me? Is it something that happened to me in the past that I did that's now coming up and re-stimulating me again? And I realized it's never you as a spiritual being. It's you, other things mentally. There's mental charge. There's things that we've done in the past that affects us. And so I was telling him this, and I was saying it to him in a way that, without, just, I don't want to invalidate someone on there, but I want to tell them that's not you.
Right.
You know what the right thing is.
Yeah.
So if you know what the right thing is, then you know what the wrong thing is.
That's right.
So when you make that decision, you realize, okay, I'm making a bad decision, because you know what the right one is. And if you believe in God, you believe that we were created to want to do good. So that's not you. And he kind of like looked at me, and his eyes kind of like, he kind of was like, and he just said, thank you.
Look at that.
He said, thank you. And it was almost like I had validated what he's been feeling all these years. Because everyone, right. What happens when you do something? Are you piece of shit? You jerk, you asshole, you made it, you have this, all that. That's what you get, and one of the wonderful things is that you can be right. You made a mistake. That's fine. That's in the past. You have the greatest opportunity right now to say, I'm never doing that again, and moving forward without ever doing that again. You have that opportunity right this second, right now. And he was just completely, I gave him the Way to Happiness booklet and told him, if you apply these 21 precepts, you can handle your life. That's how I handled my life 30 years ago. And he felt, I don't know what happens. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know but putting that there, putting that story there, me having experienced the story and being able to now bring it forward and bringing it into a cohesive way that I could deliver the story to anybody, no matter where they're from. That's a powerful thing to be able to have, and that's what I'm really the most grateful for, is that I'm able to do that, because that's why we're here. We're not here to be like, well, I gotta get new tires on my car, I gotta go fix mow the lawn. I mean, those are all things we got to do, but that's not really our purpose. Our purpose is to help others. Our purpose is to make the world a better place and to be able to raise good, healthy children, ethical children, children that will produce, that will be productive in society, that will do something, and that create a legacy from our lineage and be able to continue that legacy. That's what we do. That's our responsibilities. So definitely. I was waiting to see how long we could just keep the silence. That silence that we're talking about. All right, so we don't have that mastered, okay? We don't got the silent part mastered.
We want everybody to process.
We want to say first, because there's a space there. in order for you to process the genius that we brought to you.
It's the space between the notes.
That's right. Tick tick tock. Um, these are all like inside jokes that nobody.
I know.
Sorry, folks. We love you all. All right. Well, that's our show. Storytelling, incredibly important. We appreciate everybody that watches us. If you enjoy this content, thank you very much. You can follow me on social media, John Henry Soto, pretty much on everything. You can follow georgebatista.com and get all his wellness material. I think I have this is my site, johnhenrysoto.com, and then georgebatista.com. How about that? Our names, you can find us just by our names.
Wow. Technology.
It's incredible. So thank you very much, everybody, for tuning in. We appreciate you very much. God bless you all. We will see you all next week, 7 p.m. Central, as always. What are we doing next week?
We're going to go deeper next week.
Deeper into storytelling. Oh, that's right. I think next week we have a interesting show. I don't remember what it's about, but all right, friends. Thank you very much. Take care of yourselves. God bless. And as always,